We are about to dive into a real serious topic that is close to my heart and my purpose. For that reason, the visuals are minimal. This message is meant to be heard with the heart more than seen with the eyes. From the beginning of all things, before nations rose and fell, before kingdoms claimed dominion, before men divided themselves by color, creed, and culture, there was only one intention in the heart of the Creator: life. Not domination, not hierarchy, not oppression. Life, pure, unified, harmonious life. Creation itself was the first revelation of His love, the first expression of His nature, the first sign that existence was meant to flourish, not fracture. But as time unfolded, humanity drifted from that intention. The very beings created to reflect His unity began to reflect rebellion instead. And the tragedy of mankind is not simply that we sinned, it's that we forgot why we were created. We forgot the purpose behind breath, the meaning behind existence, the reason God shaped man from the dust and breathed His own essence into him. We forgot that creation was meant to be a mirror of His heart. And when creation forgets its Creator, destruction becomes inevitable. Humanity began to divide, to conquer, to rule over one another, to build systems of oppression, to elevate one group above another, to crush the weak, to silence the poor, to enslave the innocent. And every act of domination was a betrayal of the one who created us. Every chain placed on another human being was a chain placed on the intention of God. Every war, every genocide, every injustice was a rejection of the love that birthed creation itself. But even in the midst of rebellion, God preserved a people, not for superiority, not for pride, not for domination, but for purpose. A people chosen to be a light, a guide, a reflection of His unity in a fractured world. A people meant to show the nations what it looked like to walk with God, to honor Him, to live in harmony with His creation. A people meant to be an example, not an empire. Yet even they fell into the same rebellion that corrupted the Shining One. Pride entered, division entered, disobedience entered, and the very people meant to guide the nations began to imitate the nations. They adopted the customs of the fallen, the practices of the corrupt, the ideologies of those who rejected God's way. And because of this, judgment came, not out of hatred, but out of correction, not to destroy them, but to bring them back. The scattering, the captivity, the suffering, none of it was random. It was the consequence of a people who forgot their purpose. And the transatlantic slave trade, as horrific as it was, did not erase identity. It revealed prophecy. It exposed the truth that the world tried to bury. It showed that the descendants of those ancient people still carried something in their spirit that could not be destroyed, erased, or assimilated. But identity without purpose becomes pride, and pride becomes rebellion, and rebellion becomes blindness. That is why so many movements today, even those who rediscover their heritage, fall into the same trap as their ancestors. They reclaim identity, but lose purpose. They embrace heritage, but reject humility. They shout, "chosen," but forget what chosen means. They condemn nations God created. They preach destruction instead of restoration. They weaponize Scripture instead of illuminating it. And in doing so, they repeat the rebellion of the Shining One. The same spirit of pride, superiority, and division that corrupted creation in the first place. But the truth is deeper than identity. The truth is bigger than lineage. The truth is more powerful than heritage. Because God did not create humanity to be divided. He did not create nations to be enemies. He did not create races to be rivals. He created one human family, one creation, one purpose. And when humanity fell into division, He sent Christ to restore what was broken. Christ did not come to elevate one nation above another, He came to unite. He came to reconcile. He came to break the walls that rebellion built. He came to open the covenant to all nations, all tongues, all people. He came to show that salvation was never meant to be exclusive. It was meant to be expansive. But even in this, prophecy remains. A remnant will hear. A remnant will awaken. A remnant will return. Not all, because not all want truth. Not all want unity. Not all want God's way. Some have seared their hearts. Some have chosen rebellion. Some have embraced the spirit of the Shining One. And for them, judgment belongs to God alone. Not man, not nations, not movements, not camps, not doctrines, not ideologies. God alone. Because we are too close to the end for human judgment, too close to the final restoration, too close to the renewal of all things, too close to the moment when God Himself will separate the faithful from the rebellious, the humble from the proud, the seekers from the mockers. And when that day comes, it will not be about race. It will not be about nationality. It will not be about heritage. It will be about alignment. Who aligned with the Creator's intention, and who aligned with the rebellion that corrupted creation. The 144,000 are a remnant of purpose, not privilege. They are symbolic of purity, obedience, and assignment, not superiority. And alongside them stands a multitude from every nation, every tongue, every background, because God's heart has always been for all humanity. But humanity cannot evolve, cannot progress, cannot heal, cannot rise into what God intended as long as we cling to domination, as long as we cling to hierarchy, as long as we cling to the desire to rule over one another, as long as we cling to the influence of the Shining One. And that is why Revelation speaks of a new heaven and a new earth, because this one has been corrupted beyond repair. Not by God's failure, but by humanity's rebellion. Not by divine neglect, but by human pride. Not by the Creator's design, but by the Shining One's influence. And when God recreates, He will restore what was lost. He will rebuild what was broken. He will reunite what was divided. He will heal what was wounded. He will bring creation back to its original intention: unity, harmony, purpose, life. And the remnant, the humble, the obedient, the seekers of truth, will inherit that world. And so the message to the nations continues, because the truth cannot stop at identity alone. Identity is only the doorway, purpose is the path, and destiny is the destination. But humanity has spent generations standing at the doorway, arguing about who is chosen, who is superior, who is condemned, who is elevated, all while forgetting that the Creator never intended for His children to fight over the doorway. He intended for them to walk through it. The nations have been deceived into believing that power comes from ruling over others, when true power has always come from unity. The Shining One understood this from the beginning. He knew that if humanity ever walked in unity, true unity, not political unity, not superficial unity, but spiritual unity, then nothing would be impossible for them. He knew that a united humanity would reflect the Creator's image in a way that would expose His rebellion. So He sowed division. He planted pride. He whispered superiority. He taught nations to build walls instead of bridges, to create hierarchies instead of harmony, to elevate themselves by stepping on the backs of others. And humanity listened. Nations rose on the foundation of oppression. Empires were built on the bones of the innocent. Systems were crafted to keep one group above another. And the children of the dust, the ones whose lineage carried the original breath of God, were scattered, enslaved, and broken. Not because they were inferior, but because they were dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. Their unity, their resilience, their spiritual resonance, their connection to the earth itself, All of it threatened the rebellion that had taken root in the world, so the Shining One attacked them first. He attacked their identity. He attacked their history. He attacked their unity. He attacked their purpose. He attacked their families. He attacked their nations. He attacked their memory. Because if a people forget who they are, they will forget why they were created. And if they forget why they were created, they will never rise into what God intended them to be. But even in the scattering, even in the suffering, even in the chains, the Creator preserved something in them that could not be erased. A spark, a resonance, a spiritual frequency that tied them back to the dust from which Adam was formed. A connection to creation itself. A heartbeat that matched the rhythm of the earth. A purpose that could not be stolen, only forgotten. And now, in these last days, that spark is awakening again. Identity is returning. Understanding is rising. The truth is resurfacing. But with truth comes danger. Because truth without humility becomes pride, and pride becomes rebellion. And rebellion becomes the very thing God has always opposed. This is why the message to the nations must be spoken with clarity. Identity is not a weapon. It is a responsibility. It is a calling. It is a reminder of purpose, not a license to condemn. The children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were never chosen to dominate the nations. They were chosen to guide them, to teach them, to illuminate the path back to the Creator, to show them the way of unity, peace, justice, and righteousness. But when the chosen forget their purpose, they become like the nations they were meant to guide. They fall into the same traps. They embrace the same pride. They repeat the same rebellion. And this is what we see today. Movements rising with identity but lacking purpose, shouting truth but lacking love, proclaiming heritage but lacking humility. They condemn the nations God created. They preach destruction instead of restoration. They weaponize Scripture instead of illuminating it. And in doing so, they step out of alignment with the Creator's intention, because the Creator's heart has always been for all nations, not just one, not just a few, all. That is why Christ came, not to erase identity, but to expand the covenant, not to replace Israel, but to fulfill the promise, not to elevate one nation above another, but to bring all nations back into unity under God. The remnant of Israel still has a role, a purpose, a calling, but that calling is not to condemn. It is to lead, to teach, to unify, to restore, to show the nations what it looks like to walk with God, to reflect the Creator's heart in a world that has forgotten Him. And the nations too have a role. They are not excluded. They are not rejected. They are not condemned. They are invited. They are welcomed. They are grafted in. They are part of the promise. They are part of the restoration. They are part of the new creation that God will bring forth. But not all will listen. Not all will return. Not all will repent. Some have seared their hearts. Some have chosen rebellion. Some have embraced the Shining One's deception. And for them, judgment belongs to God alone. Because we are too close to the end for human judgment. Too close to the final separation. Too close to the moment when God Himself will recreate the heavens and the earth. Too close to the day when the old world will pass away and the new world will emerge. A world without domination, without oppression, without rebellion, without division. A world where humanity finally reflects the Creator's intention. A world where unity is restored. A world where creation is healed. A world where the remnant stands not in pride, but in purpose. A world where the nations walk together in the light of God. And so the message deepens, because the nations stand at a crossroads, a moment where the truth is rising again, not to divide, but to reveal. a moment where the Creator is calling humanity to remember what was spoken from the beginning, what was written through the prophets, what was fulfilled through Christ, and what is unfolding now in the final generation. For the prophets warned that a time would come when knowledge would increase and people would run to and fro across the earth, Daniel 12:4. They warned that hearts would grow cold, that nations would rise against nations, that deception would spread like wildfire, and that many would be led astray, Matthew 24:4-12. They warned that the world would return to the days of Noah, days of violence, corruption, rebellion, and spiritual blindness, Genesis 6:11-12. And here we are. Humanity has advanced in technology but regressed in wisdom. We have built towers of knowledge but lost the foundation of understanding. We have created machines that can cross galaxies but cannot cross the distance between one human heart and another. We have mastered the earth but forgotten the one who formed it. We have gained the world but lost our soul, Mark 8:36. This is the tragedy of the nations. We have become too intelligent to be humble and too proud to be wise. And yet, even in this darkness, the Creator is still calling, still reaching, still awakening a remnant whose hearts have not been seared, whose spirits have not been corrupted, whose ears can still hear the whisper of truth. For the prophets declared that God would gather His people from the four corners of the earth, Isaiah 11:12, that He would restore the lost tribes, Ezekiel 37:21-22, that He would awaken those who had forgotten their identity, Deuteronomy 31:3. And we see this happening now, not through violence, not through hatred, not through superiority, but through revelation. Identity is returning. Understanding is rising. The truth is resurfacing. But with truth comes responsibility, because the Creator never revealed identity so that one people could exalt themselves above another. He revealed identity so that His people could return to their purpose, to be a light to the nations, Isaiah 49:6, a kingdom of priests, Exodus 19:6, a people who reflect His character in a world that has forgotten Him. But many who awaken to identity fall into the same trap that destroyed their ancestors. They embrace the truth of who they are but reject the purpose behind it. They reclaim heritage but lose humility. They shout prophecy but forget love. They condemn nations God created, forgetting that Christ came to break down the dividing wall of hostility, Ephesians 2:14. This is why the message must be spoken clearly. Identity without purpose becomes pride, and pride becomes rebellion. And rebellion is the spirit of the Shining One. The Shining One was not destroyed because he lacked power. He was destroyed because he lacked humility. He wanted to ascend above the stars of God, Isaiah 14:13-14. He wanted to rule, not serve. He wanted to dominate, not unify. He wanted to exalt himself, not reflect the Creator. And when humanity embraces that same spirit, whether through nationalism, racism, tribalism, or religious arrogance, we repeat the rebellion that corrupted creation. But the Creator's intention has always been unity, always been restoration, always been reconciliation. That is why Christ came, not to condemn the world, but to save it, John 3:17. Not to elevate one nation above another, but to bring all nations into one family, Galatians 3:28. Not to erase identity, but to fulfill purpose. And yet, prophecy remains. Not all will hear, not all will return, not all will repent. Christ Himself said that the road to life is narrow and few find it, Matthew 7:14. Paul warned that in the last days, people would reject sound doctrine and follow their own desires, 2 Timothy 4:3-4. John saw that only a remnant would remain faithful while the world followed the beast, Revelation 13:8. This is why the 144,000 stand as a symbol, not of superiority, but of purity, obedience, and assignment, Revelation 14:1 5. They are a reminder that God preserves a remnant from the lineage He chose, not because they are better, but because they carry a purpose tied to the beginning of creation itself. But alongside them stands a multitude that no man can number, from every nation, tribe, people, and tongue. Revelation 7:9. This is the heart of God. Unity, not division. Restoration, not destruction. Purpose, not pride. And yet, humanity cannot rise into this unity as long as we cling to domination, as long as nations seek to rule over one another, as long as governments prioritize power over people, as long as systems are built on oppression instead of justice, as long as the Shining One's influence shapes our politics, our economies, our religions, and our identities. This is why the world is collapsing. This is why the earth groans. Romans 8:22. This is why nations rage. Psalm 2:1. This is why humanity is divided. Because we have built our world on rebellion instead of righteousness. And this is why Revelation speaks of a new heaven and a new earth. Revelation 21:1. Because the old one, the one built on domination, pride, rebellion, and deception, cannot be repaired. It must be replaced, not by human hands, but by the Creator Himself. And when He recreates, He will restore what was lost. He will heal what was broken. He will unite what was divided. He will bring humanity back to the purpose for which it was created, to reflect His love, His unity, His justice, His peace. And now, the message turns toward the world we live in today, a world that mirrors the ancient patterns with frightening accuracy, because history is not random. History is cyclical. Humanity repeats what it refuses to learn, and the nations today are walking the same path that led to the downfall of empires long before them. The prophets warned that in the last days, nations would be in distress, people's hearts would fail them for fear, and the foundations of society would shake. And when we look at the world now, the wars, the corruption, the economic collapse, the moral confusion, the division, the rise of violence, the decay of families, we see the same signs that marked the end of ancient civilizations. Rome fell not because of outside enemies, but because of internal decay, moral collapse, political corruption, economic inequality, and spiritual emptiness. Babylon fell because of arrogance, injustice, and the belief that their empire was untouchable. Egypt fell because of hardened hearts and the refusal to release those they oppressed. Every empire that rose in pride eventually fell in ruin. And today, the modern world is repeating the same pattern. Nations boast in their power, their technology, their armies, their wealth, yet they crumble from within. Governments promise peace, but create division. Leaders claim wisdom, but sow confusion. Societies claim enlightenment, but embrace darkness. Humanity claims progress, but destroys the very earth it depends on. We see the rise of global instability. Wars erupting across continents, nations threatening nations, alliances breaking, economies collapsing. We see the rise of famine and scarcity, not because the earth cannot produce enough, but because greed and mismanagement choke the supply. We see the rise of disease and pestilence, not only physical, but spiritual and emotional, as depression, anxiety, addiction, and hopelessness spread like wildfire. We see the rise of deception, misinformation, propaganda, false teachers, false prophets, and movements that twist truth into something unrecognizable. We see the rise of lawlessness, violence in the streets, corruption in high places, injustice in the courts, and a generation growing up without guidance, identity, or purpose. These are not random events. These are the birth pains of a world approaching its final chapter. And in the midst of this chaos, the Creator is still calling the nations to return, not to religion, not to tradition, not to nationalism, but to purpose. Because humanity was never meant to live like this. We were never meant to be divided by race, class, nation, or ideology. We were never meant to build systems that crush the poor and elevate the corrupt. We were never meant to destroy the earth, exploit one another, or live in constant fear. We were meant to reflect the unity of the Creator. But unity cannot exist where pride reigns. Unity cannot exist where nations seek dominance. Unity cannot exist where people cling to hatred. Unity cannot exist where hearts are hardened. Unity cannot exist where truth is rejected. This is why the world is collapsing. Not because God abandoned humanity, but because humanity abandoned God's intention. And yet, even now, the Creator is awakening a remnant, not just among the descendants of Israel, but among all nations. People who can see through the deception, people who feel the spiritual shift, people who sense that the world is approaching a turning point, people who hunger for truth, justice, unity, and purpose. This awakening is not political. It is not religious. It is not cultural. It is spiritual. It is the same awakening that happened before major shifts in history, before the fall of empires, before the rise of new eras, before the fulfillment of prophecy. It is the same stirring that moved the hearts of people during the Great Awakenings, during the collapse of oppressive regimes, during the rise of movements for justice and freedom. But this awakening is different. It is global. It is urgent. It is final, because the world is approaching the moment when the Creator will intervene directly, not through nations, not through armies, not through kings, but through His own hand. The same way He intervened in the days of Noah, the days of Egypt, the days of Babylon, the days of Rome, the same way He intervened when humanity reached the point of no return. And when He intervenes this time, it will not be to repair the old world. It will be to replace it, a new heaven, a new earth, a new creation, a restored humanity, a world built on unity, not domination, a world built on purpose, not pride, a world built on truth, not deception, a world built on love, not rebellion. But only those who align with the Creator's intention will enter that world. Only those who reject the spirit of the Shining One. Only those who choose unity over division, humility over pride, truth over deception, purpose over rebellion. This is the message to the nations. The time of choosing is now. Now we turn inward, toward the heart of humanity itself. Because the greatest battlefield is not between nations, not between races, not between governments, not between religions, but within the human heart. The world is collapsing not because of external forces, but because the internal condition of mankind has deteriorated to the point where truth is no longer recognized, righteousness is no longer valued, and unity is no longer desired. Humanity has reached a point where people no longer seek wisdom, they seek validation. They no longer pursue truth, they pursue comfort. They no longer desire understanding, they desire agreement. And in this state, deception thrives, because deception does not need to convince the mind when the heart is already willing to believe a lie. This is why the nations are in turmoil. This is why division spreads faster than healing. This is why hatred multiplies while love grows cold. This is why people cling to ideologies that destroy them. Because the heart of humanity has been shaped by centuries of rebellion, trauma, oppression, and spiritual blindness. And yet, even in this darkness, the Creator still calls. He calls not to condemn, but to awaken, not to destroy, but to restore, not to shame, but to reveal. Because the Creator understands something humanity has forgotten. A broken heart can still be healed, but a hardened heart cannot. This is why the message to the nations must be spoken with urgency, because the world is approaching a moment where hearts will no longer be able to change. A moment where the decisions people make now will determine their destiny in the world to come. A moment where the separation between the remnant and the rebellious will become permanent. We see this unfolding in real time. People cling to hatred as if it were identity. They cling to division as if it were heritage. They cling to rebellion as if it were freedom. They cling to deception as if it were truth. And the more they cling, the harder their hearts become. This is why the Creator warned that in the last days, He would send a strong delusion upon those who refuse to love the truth, not as punishment, but as confirmation of the path they chose. Because a heart that rejects truth long enough eventually loses the ability to recognize it. But the remnant, the ones who still feel the pull of the Creator, the ones who still sense the spiritual shift, the ones who still hunger for righteousness, they are awakening. They are rising. They are beginning to see through the illusions of the world. They are beginning to understand that the systems of man cannot save them, that the governments of the world cannot unite them, that the religions of men cannot transform them. They are beginning to understand that the only path forward is the path the Creator intended from the beginning: unity, humility, obedience, and love. But unity cannot be built on lies. Unity cannot be built on pride. Unity cannot be built on superiority. Unity cannot be built on condemnation. Unity cannot be built on the belief that one group is destined to rule over another. Unity can only be built on truth, the truth of who we are, the truth of why we were created, the truth of what went wrong, and the truth of what must be restored. This is why identity matters. Not to elevate one people above another, but to restore the purpose that was lost. The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were chosen not to dominate the nations, but to guide them. Not to condemn the nations, but to illuminate them. Not to rule over the nations, but to serve as a bridge between the Creator and His creation. But when the chosen forget their purpose, they fall into the same rebellion that destroyed the nations around them. They become proud. They become arrogant. They become judgmental. They become blind. And in doing so, they repeat the mistakes of their ancestors. The same mistakes that led to their scattering, their suffering, and their captivity. This is why the awakening happening today is so dangerous. Because identity without purpose becomes pride, and pride becomes rebellion, and rebellion becomes destruction. But the Creator is calling His people, not just Israel, but all nations, to return to the path of unity, to return to the path of humility, to return to the path of purpose, to return to the path of truth. Because the world is approaching a moment where unity will no longer be optional. It will be the only path to survival. The crises humanity faces, environmental collapse, economic instability, global conflict, technological overreach, moral decay, cannot be solved by division. They cannot be solved by nationalism. They cannot be solved by hatred. They cannot be solved by pride. They can only be solved by unity. But unity requires surrender. Surrender of pride, surrender of hatred, surrender of superiority, surrender of rebellion. And many are unwilling to surrender. Many would rather cling to their ideologies than embrace truth. Many would rather cling to their identity than embrace purpose. Many would rather cling to their pride than embrace humility. And for them, the world to come will not be a place of restoration. It will be a place of judgment, because the Creator will not allow the new world to be corrupted by the same rebellion that destroyed the old one. He will not allow the new creation to be tainted by the same pride that fractured the first. He will not allow the new humanity to be divided by the same hatred that consumed the nations. This is why the message to the nations must be spoken now, because the window of mercy is closing, and the time of choosing is upon us. And now, the message turns toward the systems of the world, the structures humanity has built, the institutions we trust, the powers we submit to, the ideologies we cling to. Because these systems shape the hearts of nations more than any single leader ever could. And the truth is this: the systems of the world were never designed to bring humanity into unity. They were designed to maintain control. From the earliest civilizations, the pattern has been the same. Kingdoms rise by conquest. Empires expand through domination. Governments maintain power through fear. Economies thrive on exploitation. Religions fracture into sects and denominations, each claiming to hold the exclusive truth. And through it all, humanity becomes more divided, more confused, more disconnected from the Creator's intention. The world teaches us to compete, not cooperate, to dominate, not serve, to accumulate, not share, to rule, not unify. And these values, these systems, are the very opposite of what the Creator intended for humanity. They are the fingerprints of the Shining One, whose rebellion was rooted in the desire to rule rather than reflect the Creator's heart. This is why the nations are in chaos, because the systems we trust are built on foundations that cannot sustain life. They are built on pride, greed, fear, and deception. They promise stability, but deliver instability. They promise prosperity, but deliver inequality. They promise peace, but deliver conflict. They promise freedom, but deliver bondage. We see this in the global economy, a system where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few while billions struggle to survive. We see it in politics, where leaders serve their own interests rather than the people they claim to represent. We see it in religion, where institutions prioritize tradition over truth, hierarchy over humility, and power over purpose. We see it in education, where knowledge is taught without wisdom and information is given without understanding. We see it in technology, where innovation outpaces morality and convenience replaces conscience. These systems are collapsing because they were never built on the Creator's design. They were built on the rebellion of man. And yet, humanity continues to cling to them, hoping they will save us. We look to governments to fix what only unity can heal. We look to economies to fix what only compassion can restore. We look to technology to fix what only truth can reveal. We look to leaders to fix what only the Creator can transform. This is why the message to the nations must be spoken with clarity. The systems of the world cannot save humanity. They were never meant to. They were built to manage a fallen world, not restore a broken one. The Creator's intention was never for humanity to be ruled by kings, presidents, empires, or institutions. His intention was for humanity to be guided by purpose, united by love, and sustained by truth. But when humanity rejected His way, we created systems to replace Him, systems that reflect our rebellion rather than His righteousness. And now, those systems are reaching their breaking point. We see the signs everywhere: nations drowning in debt, governments losing legitimacy, economies collapsing under their own weight, societies fracturing along racial, political, and ideological lines, families breaking apart, communities dissolving, violence rising, trust disappearing, hope fading. These are not isolated events. They are symptoms of a world that has drifted too far from its purpose. But even in this collapse, the Creator is still calling. He is calling the nations to recognize that the world cannot be healed by the same systems that broke it. He is calling humanity to return to the foundation He laid from the beginning: unity, humility, obedience, and love. This is why the awakening happening now is not political, it is not economic, it is not cultural, it is spiritual. because the Creator is preparing humanity for a world beyond the systems we know, a world where the old order has passed away and a new creation has begun. But before the new can come, the old must fall. And the fall of the old world will not be gentle. It will not be quiet. It will not be gradual. It will be sudden, global, and undeniable. Because the systems of the world are too corrupted to be repaired. This is why the nations must hear the message now. Because the collapse is not the end. It is the beginning. The beginning of a world where humanity finally reflects the Creator's intention. The beginning of a world where unity replaces division, truth replaces deception, justice replaces oppression, and love replaces fear. But only those who align with the Creator's intention will enter that world. Only those who reject the systems of rebellion, only those who choose truth over deception, only those who choose unity over division, only those who choose humility over pride. Because the new world cannot be built on the foundations of the old. And now the message turns toward the future, not the future imagined by governments, not the future promised by technology, not the future predicted by economists or philosophers, but the future that aligns with the Creator's intention. Because humanity stands at a crossroads, and the path we choose will determine whether we collapse under the weight of our rebellion or rise into the unity we were created for. The ideology that must guide humanity forward is not new. It is ancient. It is the same melody the Creator has sung through every prophet, every covenant, every generation. A melody of unity, humility, justice, compassion, and truth. A melody that has echoed through time, calling humanity back to the purpose we abandoned. But humanity has always resisted this melody. We prefer the noise of pride, the rhythm of rebellion, the harmony of domination. We build systems that elevate the powerful and crush the weak. We create ideologies that divide us into tribes, races, nations, and classes. We cling to identities that separate us instead of purposes that unite us. And yet, the Creator continues to call. He calls through the rise and fall of empires, the collapse of systems, the suffering of nations, the awakening of the remnant, and the shaking of the earth itself. Because the Creator knows that humanity cannot survive the future we are creating unless we return to the intention He established from the beginning. The best course for mankind, the only course that aligns with the Creator's design, is a return to unity rooted in humility. Not unity built on force, not unity built on domination, not unity built on erasing identity, but unity built on purpose. A unity where nations cooperate instead of compete, where people serve instead of rule, where truth is valued more than ideology, where compassion outweighs pride, and where humanity reflects the Creator instead of the Shining One. This is the ideology that must guide the nations. This is the ideology that must shape the future. This is the ideology that must be embraced if humanity is to survive what is coming. Because the world is approaching a moment where the systems we trust will fail. The governments we rely on will collapse. The economies we depend on will crumble. The technologies we worship will turn against us. The ideologies we cling to will be exposed as empty. And when that moment comes, only those who have aligned themselves with the Creator's intention will stand. The remnant will not be defined by race, nationality, or religion. They will be defined by humility. They will be defined by unity. They will be defined by truth. They will be defined by their willingness to reject the spirit of domination and embrace the spirit of restoration. This is the message to the nations. The future belongs to the humble. And now the message turns toward restoration. Not the restoration imagined by governments or institutions, not the restoration promised by political movements or social reforms, but the restoration the Creator intended from the beginning, because humanity cannot move forward until we return to the foundation we abandoned. And that foundation is not power, it is not identity, it is not dominance, it is not ideology, it is humility. Humility is the doorway to unity. Unity is the doorway to restoration. Restoration is the doorway to purpose. And purpose is the doorway to the world to come. This is the ideology humanity must embrace if we are to survive the collapse of the old world and enter the new. Because the Creator's intention has never changed. His desire has always been for humanity to live in harmony with Him, with each other, and with creation itself. But humanity has spent generations building systems that oppose this intention, systems built on domination, competition, greed, and pride, systems that elevate the few and crush the many, systems that divide instead of unite. And now those systems are failing. We see it in the instability of nations, collapsing of economies, the breakdown of families, the rise of violence, eroding morality, and in the spiritual emptiness of society. These are not random events. They are the consequences of a world built on rebellion instead of righteousness. A world shaped by the Shining One's ideology instead of the Creator's intention. A world that has forgotten the melody of unity that echoes through Scripture and history. But even now, the Creator is calling humanity back to that melody. He is calling us to reject the spirit of domination and embrace the spirit of restoration. He is calling us to lay down our pride, our hatred, our superiority, our rebellion, and return to the path of humility. Because humility is not weakness. Humility is strength under alignment, posture that allows truth to enter, the soil where unity grows, and the foundation of restoration. This is why the Creator has always opposed the proud and given grace to the humble. Because pride closes the heart, but humility opens it. Pride divides, but humility unites. Pride destroys, but humility restores. And restoration is what the nations need now more than ever. Restoration of identity, not as a weapon, but as a purpose. Restoration of community, not as a tribe, but as a family. Restoration of justice, not as revenge, but as righteousness. Restoration of love, not as emotion, but as action. Restoration of truth, not as ideology, but as revelation. Restoration of unity, not as uniformity, but as harmony. This is the restoration the Creator desires. This is the restoration humanity must embrace, and the restoration that will prepare the world for what comes next. Because the future cannot be built on the foundations of the past. The old world was built on domination. The new world must be built on unity. The old world was built on pride. The new world must be built on humility. The old world was built on rebellion. The new world must be built on obedience. The old world was built on deception. The new world must be built on truth. This is why the Creator is awakening a remnant, a people who understand that identity is not the destination, but the doorway. A people who understand that purpose is greater than heritage. A people who understand that unity is greater than division. A people who understand that humility is greater than pride. A people who understand that the world cannot be restored through domination, but only through love. This remnant will not be defined by race, nationality, or religion. They will be defined by their alignment with the Creator's intention. They will be defined by their willingness to reject the spirit of the Shining One and embrace the spirit of restoration. They will be defined by their commitment to unity, humility, truth, and purpose. And through this remnant, the Creator will begin to restore what was lost, not through force, not through violence, not through domination, but through the quiet, steady, unstoppable power of unity rooted in humility. because unity is not the absence of differences. Unity is the alignment of purpose, harmony of creation, and the reflection of the Creator's heart. And when humanity embraces unity, restoration becomes inevitable. And now the message turns toward the final separation, the moment when the world as we know it reaches the point of no return. Because every age has a threshold, a line that cannot be crossed without consequence. And humanity is approaching that line now, not because the Creator desires destruction, but because the systems we have built cannot sustain life any longer. The old world is collapsing under the weight of its own rebellion. The foundations of nations are cracking. The pillars of society are trembling. The structures humanity trusted for centuries are failing. And this collapse is not a punishment. It is the natural consequence of a world built on domination instead of unity, pride instead of humility, deception instead of truth. The signs are everywhere. The earth groans under the strain of exploitation. The nations rage under the pressure of division. The people suffer under the burden of injustice. The systems crumble under the weight of corruption. The hearts of humanity grow cold under the influence of rebellion. These are not isolated events. They are the birth pains of a world transitioning from one age to another. A world shedding the skin of rebellion and preparing for the restoration the Creator promised from the beginning. But before restoration comes separation. Not a separation of races, nations, classes, or of religions. It's a separation of hearts, because the Creator does not judge by outward appearance. He judges by alignment. And in the final days, humanity will be divided not by identity, but by intention, not by heritage, but by humility, not by lineage, but by love, not by knowledge, but by obedience. This is the separation the prophets spoke of, the dividing of wheat and tares, sheep and goats, faithful and rebellious, a separation based not on who people claim to be, but on who they have chosen to become. And this separation is already happening. We see it in the rise of the remnant, those who hunger for truth, who seek unity, who embrace humility, who reject the spirit of domination. They are awakening across nations, across cultures, across backgrounds. They are not united by race or religion, but by purpose. They are the ones who feel the shift in the spirit. They are the ones who sense the collapse of the old world. They are the ones who understand that humanity cannot continue on its current path. And we see it in the rise of the rebellious. Those who cling to pride, who embrace hatred, who reject truth, who harden their hearts. They are not defined by identity, but by alignment with the Shining One's ideology. They are the ones who mock unity. They are the ones who resist humility. They are the ones who cling to systems of domination. They are the ones who refuse to change. This is the final separation, not imposed by man, but revealed by the choices of humanity. And as the separation becomes clearer, the collapse of the old world accelerates, because the Creator will not allow the new creation to be built on the foundations of the old. He will not allow the world to enter a new age while carrying the rebellion of the past. He will not allow the remnant to inherit a world still shaped by domination, deception, and pride. This is why the systems of the world must fall, the nations must be shaken, the earth must be cleansed, and this old world must pass away. Not because the Creator delights in destruction, but because He delights in restoration. And restoration requires removal. Renewal requires release. Rebirth requires the end of what came before. The collapse of the old world is not the end of humanity. It is the end of rebellion. It is the end of domination. It is the end of deception. It is the end of the Shining One's influence. It is the end of the systems that enslaved humanity for generations. And in the ashes of the old world, the remnant will rise, not as conquerors, but as servants, not as rulers, but as guides, not as masters, but as stewards. They will carry the ideology the Creator intended from the beginning: unity rooted in humility, love expressed through action, truth lived through obedience. They will be the bridge between the old and the new, the foundation of the restored creation, and those who reflect the Creator's heart in a world finally free from rebellion. And as the remnant rises, the new creation begins to take shape, not through human effort, but through divine intervention, because the Creator Himself will complete what humanity could never accomplish. He will cleanse the earth. He will restore creation. He will establish justice. He will bring unity. He will heal the nations. He will fulfill the promise spoken from the beginning, and the world will finally reflect the intention of its Creator. And now the message reaches its final movement, the conclusion of all matters, the truth that stands when every system falls, when every ideology collapses, when every nation is humbled, when every heart is revealed. Because after all the warnings, after all the awakenings, after all the separations, after all the shaking of the earth and the trembling of the nations, the Creator brings humanity back to the simplest, clearest, most foundational truth ever spoken, a truth older than empires, deeper than prophecy, stronger than rebellion, and cannot be shaken, erased, or replaced. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the whole duty of mankind. This is the conclusion of all matters, the purpose behind creation, the foundation of unity. This is the anchor of restoration and the melody that has echoed through every generation. Because everything humanity has built, every system, every ideology, every nation, every philosophy has failed for one reason. We abandoned the Creator's intention. We feared men instead of God. We obeyed systems instead of truth. We followed pride instead of purpose. We embraced domination instead of unity. And the result has been centuries of suffering, division, oppression, and rebellion. But the Creator never changed. His intentions never shifted, never wavered, and His command never evolved. Fear God. Keep His commandments. Walk in unity, humility, love, and in truth. This is the whole duty of mankind. Not fear as in terror, but fear as in reverence, alignment, surrender, and recognition of the one who formed the dust and breathed life into it. Not commandments as in legalism, but commandments as in the Creator's original design for humanity. To love one another, do justice, walk humbly, care for creation, reject domination, embrace unity, and reflect His heart. This is the path humanity abandoned, the path humanity must return to, the path the remnant will walk, the path the new creation will be built upon. Because when the old world collapses, and it will, the only thing that will remain is the truth the Creator spoke from the beginning, the truth that guided the prophets, the truth that Christ embodied, the truth that the apostles carried, the truth that the remnant now awakens to. Fear God. Keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of mankind. This is the truth that unites nations, heals division, restores creation, breaks the spirit of domination, silences the serpent's rebellion, and prepares humanity for the world to come. Because the new creation, the new heaven and the new earth, will not be built on the foundations of the old world. It will not be built on pride, greed, hatred, or rebellion. It will not be built on the systems of men or the ideologies of nations. It will not be built on domination or deception. It will be built on the fear of God, obedience to His intention, unity rooted in humility, love expressed through action, and truth lived through purpose. This is the world the remnant will inherit, the Creator promised, humanity was always meant to live in and reflects the heart of God. And the doorway into that world is simple, ancient, and unchanging. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of mankind. This is the conclusion of all matters.